Hi, this is Aaron Azrod, and welcome to the 132nd episode of the Truth Island podcast. In the last two episodes, Kenny and I discussed the nature of evil, what makes an evil person, and how this can lead to evil societies. To summarize, evil can be said to derive from exalting oneself to a state that is greater or holier than all others. Evil people need not have evil intentions or even commit many evil acts, but merely the thought that one's existence and way of life are superior to that of others. This can enable a person to enforce draconian measures and even commit atrocities in order to ensure their will is carried out. In many respects, the very opposite of an evil person is a person who is very humble, a person who does not believe that they or their way of life is inherently superior to that of anyone else. An individual who can accurately see their own limitations and flaws is far less likely to impose their will onto others, as they always leave open the room for possibility that they may be wrong about something. Unfortunately, as we push further into the 21st century, humility is becoming a far greater scarcity, with more politicians, celebrities, and even public intellectuals speaking with absolute certainty on a variety of different subjects, including areas they know nothing of. The words "I was mistaken" or "I don't know" have also become quite a rarity, as to not know something has become a sign of weakness. No matter who we turn to, just about everyone these days claims to be in possession of all there is to know, and yet, when pressed with further questions, we are quickly exposed to all that they do not know. It is said that one of the hallmarks of intelligence is the ability to know all the things which one does not know, but wishes to know. But suppose it is not intelligence that is really at play, but simply the power of humility that is secretly at work. Helping to keep me humble, I am once again joined by Kenny. Kenny, what do you think of this quote? The superior man knows he isn't superior.
Oh yeah, that's not a bad one. It's one of my friends when he hears things like that, he would roll his eyes and say, "Ah, bollocks." But no, yeah, I think there's some truth in it. But the problem is that the quote even exists. I mean, and if it's said by those who are, well, I know that I'm not a superior man, therefore I am the superior man. Ha. It's like, okay, well, dude, calm the hell down. We know what you're doing here. But the point is that, the truth is, I think that, yeah, those who are quote unquote superior or superior in the sense of humanity or in the sense of there's the ultimate good, right? Those who are actually superior don't give a crack about being superior. They don't care. It's not like they wake up in the morning thinking, what a nice, I just love a dash of superiority with my coffee. They don't care about it at all. When they're doing the smarty pants brainy thing, they don't see themselves doing smarty pants brainy things. It's just being themselves. And it's our measure of them. It's us that cause we measure them against ourselves, and we say, no, 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 they're absolutely better than us. But I would say there are people who are better than us, who are smarter than us, and faster, stronger, and so forth. But just deplorable human beings, And I wouldn't say that. So it really does depend on how what the measure is, what the standard is, and it depends on the kind of people we're dealing with.
So I guess, when I wrote that quote, I'm thinking of it in terms of and it's kind of like a play on what Socrates says, that, like, I am ignorant, right? And it's leaving the room, it's leaving a healthy space open of like, here's all that I don't know. Here is all the ways that I am inadequate, right? I might be really good at this one thing, but I'm totally inadequate in a host of other things, right? And I think that the let's say person who considers themselves to be superior, they don't necessarily just consider themselves to be superior in cooking. It has a way of like blending into all other facets of life, right? Like they're a superior chef, but they're also a superior volleyball player. It just seems to bleed into facets where it just doesn't apply. Whereas I think that some level of understanding comes to the point where, okay, I know that there's so many people that are just wiser than me, so many people that who are just more knowledgeable in these specific domains than me. And who am I to say that my brand of superiority, or who's to say my brand of knowledge is superior to that of anyone else? It's like I always have this like vision in my head of, let's say you have a PhD biologist, right? And he's living in this very nice home, and he hires a contractor or a carpenter to come do some work on his house. Like it would be easy for that PhD biologist to be like, well, I work with my mind, you work with your hands. And that right there is like, I think on the road to evil, right then and there, like, oh, well, I work with my mind, I have a doctorate in this and that. You here, sir, working with your hands, where it's like, wait a minute, this carpenter is vastly superior in working with their hands. They have a vast knowledge of infrastructure, of architecture, of cutting tiles and so forth. And I think taking splendor and joy in the superiority of others sort of negates your own superiority.
Yeah, I mean that's what part of what humility does, is that humility learns to rejoice in others rather than in itself alone, if in itself at all. So yeah, I mean looking at other people and saying, and first of all, you're right. I think that everybody's going to be superior, I mean, supreme at one thing, and far better, yeah, so far more superior in one thing than another man is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's we all have to learn learn to be at peace with the fact that we're not going to be good at everything.
All
And
right.
another thing is that it's troublesome when we start thinking in those terms of, okay, there's the simple matter of facts. Johnny is far better at math than Lucy or whatever. Okay, fine. That's perfectly. I mean, it's just facts. It's just what it is. But Lucy is a far faster runner, or far better in English.
Mm.
That's a fact. The problem now becomes, okay, when we start, because of what we admire as a society, because of where we are as where we are at as a society, what we value more. If we value mathematics more or English more, whichever one we value more, we're going to now raise either Johnny or Lucy to an even greater status, saying that not only are they better at these subjects, but they're better human beings. Well, yeah, or better, contributors to the, that may be the case, but we keep going further and further with it until we get to this whole celebrity culture where this person is actually just a celebrity for no reason whatsoever, just because of the culture's assessments. But I think that that's part of humility, in the sense of when we can rejoice in other people's strengths, and we can rejoice in them being really good at what they do. I have a friend who says, he says, I just like it when somebody's up to something good. He likes it when somebody is writing, when somebody is drawing something, when someone is creating something, putting their money to good use, like to build a home, or finishing a kitchen project, whatever it is. He just likes seeing other people not only succeed but actually create something. And I think that's a really good attitude. It's not just an attitude. It's not an attitude. It's not like this is some weird psychological condition. This is really who he is. It's not a matter of him consciously trying to be the thing, because that's not who you are if you're consciously trying to do it. It's just naturally who he is, and I think that's a really good place to be.
Yes, and I think that money, speaking of money and what you said earlier about what we value things, I think money can sometimes blind people to humility, right? And if we say that this occupation pays $45,000 a year, however, this other occupation pays $300,000 a year, it's very easy for the person who earns $300,000 a year to be like, well, inherently I'm superior. The work that I perform is worth $300,000. Clearly, the endeavor that I have chosen, the vocation that I have chosen, is superior than that of the person that earns $45,000 a year. And I think there's a great danger in this, because as I've discussed with you and perhaps with a lot of others on this podcast, paramedics only earn like $40,000 a year. And if they pick you up the wrong way, if they just slightly pick you up the wrong way, you're paralyzed for life. Like if you get hit by a car and they just accidentally twist your neck in the wrong way, you will never walk again. And I'm like, okay, that seems a lot more important than investment financial analyst dude. Okay, again, maybe the financial analyst dude is worth his grain and salt. Fair enough, but I think that attachment to monetary value, when we start looking at human life in terms of how much money we afford that particular person, we make the danger of being like, well, this particular life is more significant, superior, of greater value to society than another form of life. And even if that person's not doing particularly anything evil, like I'll use a sports athlete for example. A sports athlete's not doing anything evil. Like a baseball player is not. They don't have they're not. They're not trying to control the financial markets. They're just throwing a baseball across the field and so forth. But I think the danger is when the baseball player says, "Well, I'm on the Yankees. I earn $3 million a year. Clearly I'm better than the guy in the stands, selling popcorn." I think there is that huge danger of thinking oneself superior because of the monetary estimation that's been associated with their vocation.
Yeah, I mean, money is one of those things. Money is a really big game changer. It's a really money defines so much in this world. We think it doesn't, but it does. And we also, and nobody likes the guy who makes a lot of money. I mean, we all really, we don't. We all we don't like the guy who makes a lot of money until we're that guy who makes a lot of money. Then it's all of a sudden, hey, it's all right now. It's like everything's copacetic. No. But money's a big game changer. And the problem is no, you're not a better person because you earn more money. You just earn more money. You earn more money than him. Now, if you lived in a society where better is defined, the ultimate human, you say the ultimate human efforts, or the ultimate human, the ideal human is a person who has the most money, then for sure absolutely you are better in that sense, in the societal sense, that than the person who makes less money than you do. But here's the thing. Here's the interesting thing about when being better than other people is constantly on your mind, even drops on your mind. And before I say this, so you don't think, he's just being mean. Well, it happens to me too. I think about this, and sometimes I have to catch myself thinking about either being better or not as good as this other person. Here's the problem with that. The problem with that is that it's illustrative of your own, how you say, your own insecurities. It's illustrative of your own your crippling fear that you may not be worth jack shit. And so what happens is you are trying to prove to yourself, grasping at straws. I mean, you are falling off a cliff and you're trying to grasp for anything that'll save your life. Because if you hit rock bottom, if you hit that ground, and you figure out that no, in fact, you are the worst piece of jack on this world, you're not gonna know how to live with yourself. And so what you're doing is you're grasping at straws, you're grasping at any little branch, any vine, to save yourself from the total mayhem that is your failure as a human being.
Wow, I love that we've gone in this direction, because I actually like talking about that individual of the absolute failure, because even an absolute failure tries to hide behind their virtue, right? So like it kind of comes back to like let's say you have someone who's extremely poor. Oh, well, I don't need all of these other things, I can take solace in my what, like there
Okay,
is
play
right,
Jack.
right, there is that guy and we all have that friend, right? We all have that friend who's like, I don't need fancy cars and houses. I'm perfectly content. And I I know two types. I know two versions of that person. The first version legitimately does not need those things, and they don't tell people they don't need those things. They just simply live without them, right? And those people are freaking amazing. I love dude who has like a flip phone, but doesn't show everyone, oh, I have a flip phone, everyone, I'm so much better than you. It's just they have it and they just don't care about it. Love that guy. And then there's the other version of that of like, check out my flip phone. I'm not inundated with social media. It's like, and we hate that guy, right? Um, so I think that you're right, that there is this need, there is this need to grasp to anything that makes one feel superior. Even the most wretched, person in the face of the earth is going to try and grasp onto something that will allow them to hold their chin up high and be like, oh well, I'm enlightened. I know the way. I know this. And this kind of comes into the point that I was going to get to, is this idea of virtue superiority. So we have superiority as defined by money, right? Like I engage in
Yeah.
this vocation that gives me money. For those who are unable to obtain that, they then begin going down this rabbit hole of virtue superiority. And this kind of connects with, we talked about vegans last time or something, of like, I live this particular way of life. I live in a tent. I sew my own clothing or whatever it is. And there's also then another form of virtue and superiority that comes in that, because if you're not living if you have like zero, if you don't live with like zero carbon emissions or whatever, you're inherently inferior. Like, I'm superior to you because I live with zero carbon emissions or whatever. And this is just the same thing all over again, right? This is the same thing. This is like the like underclasses version of superiority. Like, they can't
Yeah.
define themselves with superiority in the traditional money way. They're defining their superiority by virtue of their virtue.
Yes.
And I think that's just as dangerous as the baseball player who's defining his virtue as a result of the fact that he makes $3 million.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. It's ridiculous because, but it's human. It's totally understandable. It's very, very human. But it's not, it's not one of those things that that we can't live without. We can, but we enjoy superiority so much. We enjoy putting people down so much because that's the only way that we ever feel any shred of self-respect or self anything. And so the point is simply that when humility is removed, and here's the thing: people often think that humility is lowering yourself and posturing yourself in a matter of like, oh, I'm not worthy to be here, I am but a worm and a slave. No, no, that's not humility, bro. That's a very self-conscious, I would say a self-conscious, like a personal self, like bringing, what's the word I'm looking for? Can you condescend yourself? No, you can lowering yourself, right? It's a self-conscious lowering, which is not, that's not what humility is, because humility is pretty darn confidence. Confidence and humility go hand in hand. Humility is something else. Humility is totally not being about yourself, totally forgetting who you are. When your own ideas aren't even something you hold on, that you can't hold on to them because you barely remember your ideas. You know what I mean? It's almost like a self-forgetting while at the same time remembering. It's very strange. It's like when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I use the restroom. I relieve myself, right? That is very natural to me. I don't have to think about it. I can do that. I can do that in half asleep. you know, I can do that half asleep. And that's what humility is like, relieving yourself. No, the point is simply that it's that natural. It's that it's that thoughtless. When you're thinking about being humble, when you're thinking about I need to humble myself, you're already listen. You're not missing the mark. You're way past it. You are already you're somewhere near pride already, and so and so the idea that these guys have to always announce, my flip phone. Oh yes, or I do you not know that cows have feelings too? Well, sure, maybe. I don't care. But the point the point is simply that when your ideas have to be announced like that, very announcing of your ideas, you've proven that not only do you care very little, you care very little for those ideas, you actually care about yourself being seen as a holder of those ideas. But it also shows that even in your humble, oh, well, I'm as humble as I am expressing these things, oh, king, live forever. No, you're not really humble. You're pretending to be humble. Humility and sincerity are super easy to fake. All you have to do is, well, lower your head, don't make eye contact, and put your hands behind your back, and have a soft spoken voice,
I do concur, Kenny.
Nice
um,
days.
okay, now, all right, so we're actually in a very interesting paradox over here, okay? Because if you outwardly profess how humble you are, that is pride, right? Like, I am so humble, I am so this, I am beneath all of you. There is like another strain of superiority that's at work there, right? Like, I am taking solace in the fact that I am superior to everyone else in humility. Like, you're actually
Yeah,
playing a game where you're
playing a
relishing
game.
you're relishing on how superior you are based on your level of humility, which is a trap that I imagine some people fall into. I think that, so maybe when we come to define humility, it's not something that is like outwardly professed. It's not something that's like outwardly seen. It's more of a state of mind. I think it's a state of mind that someone's not even aware of, where this is what I imagine. Okay, I'm going to give you a fictional character, which I believe to be, we'll call him Mr. Humble. In my
Nice.
world, I think that Mr. Humble is a person that wakes up in the morning. They don't try and do anything extraordinary. Like, Mr. Humble wakes up, he has his coffee, he wears average clothing. Like, I know all of these like hipsters that go to thrift stores. Man, look at me! I got this shirt for $2. Look how trendy I am that I only pay two. I'm like, Mr. Humble doesn't buy things for $2, but he doesn't buy the most expensive brand name clothing either. He probably just goes to Sears and Macy's and buys things that he can get on sale or whatever, and
Yeah,
doesn't even tell, right? Like, Mr. Humble doesn't try and stand out in any such way. He doesn't try and buy very lavish clothing or live a very lavish life, but nor does he try and practice the extreme aesthetic of like, look how much I can give up, right? He's just living the default lifestyle. He's like the default character in a video game. Like, he just hasn't been customized. He's living that default pathway, and he's not trying to distinguish himself in either lavish goods or in extreme asceticism. He's just living default. And Mr. Humble, in my opinion, is just awe-inspired and impressed by whatever he sees around him. When he sees an artist that's doing an incredible job, he's inspired and impressed. If he sees a carpenter, he's impressed by that. If he sees a talented musician on the sidewalk, he's very impressed with that as well. But he doesn't consciously be like, oh, here's a 20, my good man, like, keep up the good work. Like, he's just like, wow, that's really good music. And if he's not impressed, he's also honest with himself. Like, he's honest with his emotions. He's like, maybe I could use a little bit of work there, right? He's not just delivering false flattery out there. There's things that he likes, there's things that he doesn't like.
yeah.
He's not trying too hard to really he's not trying too hard to put himself below or above anyone else. He just simply is. And that's the closest thing, that's the closest visual image I can conjure in my own mind of what a humble person looks like or feels like. How does that sound to you?
No, I think that's pretty close there. I mean, I would say that the idea of Mr. Humble being as he is in fact humility. He is a humble man. The only place that I would differ is simply that it's not so much. I guess no, it doesn't matter because I understand what you're saying. When you said that it's a state of mind, I say let me ask you this: are you saying that it's a yeah, it's a state of mind, but it's not a consciously held state of mind. It's a state.
Precisely so. So it's
Yeah,
not like he's Mr. Humble is not waking up in the morning saying, I am going to be the most humble person that has ever walked the face of the earth. He just, by virtue of who he is, he just, when he sees a great movie, he's just like, that was great. That was awesome. Or
yeah,
this was a good meal. Thank you, my friend. And he's not trying, there's no effort in trying to be that ultra humble person. And there are occasions in Mr. Humble's life where he's like, I think this could use a little work. because if you're trying to be ultra humble, no matter how crappy something is, you're going to pretend like it's okay. You're going to be like, oh, this inadequate food or this like overburnt chicken is perfectly adequate. It's no problem. Whereas Mr. Humble isn't trying to be humble, so he can actually levy fair criticism when the occasion merits.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, because if we when we hold those kinds of idea, that kind of idea, consciously, you're right. We sacrifice a lot for it, because at the end of the day, it becomes a religion, it becomes a god, and gods demand sacrifices, and so it becomes one of those things where, we'll be more than willing to lie. We'll be more than willing to do all the things we say we don't stand for the sake of upholding the idea that we stand for this idea, which is, human beings are very interesting creatures. So no, I would say that if the truly humble man really starts looking like an average Joe, like a really
Yeah.
like a just a regular, you can't tell whether or not he's humble or not. And he doesn't care whether you can tell it or not. He's just himself, 247. So this is one of those things that where we start to dissect these kinds of ideas, we start finding that what these things actually look like, what these things behave like, whether it's love, humility, generosity, goodness, and so forth, they don't really look like the traditional image, like what we've been seeing in movies for decades, or cartoons or the books we read. Some of them capture pretty darn well, but it start looking very different. Um, at least what we were told most of the time. But to tell a kid to be humble is like the worst thing you can tell them. You don't tell a kid to be humble, because by telling them to be humble, you're making them self-aware about their humility, and so you have to go about it a different way.
Absolutely. I think that, as for the past few months, I've been really, really diving deep into my Lao Tzu and my Taoism. And a lot of these things have to kind of come organically. And this is such a cliched phrase, oh, it has to come naturally or organically. And I think that it's often poorly defined what that means for something to become organically. And I think what it is that when you try too hard to be something, you try too hard to be humble, you try too hard to be just about anything, there is that strain. Like it's again, my words are starting to fade from me because it's so hard to actually explain what exactly this thing is. But
Mm.
there's a certain way in which if you just wake up and you're like you focus more on your activities for the day and not who you are. So Mr. Humble doesn't think, well, I'm going to go to this dinner event and act ultra humble at this dinner event. He's just focused on the dinner event. That's kind of the state of mind that you have to be, where you're just like you're saying to yourself, okay, at 10 o'clock, I'm going to go to the gym. At 12:30, I'm going to do this. But you're not actually imagining yourself in those situations. Like, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to flex my muscles, or I'm going to help this guy. I'm going to do this thing. And it's like you're almost stripping your language. You're, as Yoda says, you're unlearning so many things.
Yeah.
You're thinking of the world as a kindergartner would. Me go to gym, me go to dinner event, me do this, me do that. And you're basically just plotting. You're just engaging in these activities, but you're not really thinking about how you appear in these activities. You're just simply a participant in these activities without being all that cognizant in how you come off in that event, right? You're not worried about how other people are perceiving you. You're not worried about like acting humble or acting superior or acting smart. Like so many people, a lot of people are not in the moment because when they're engaged in a conversation, they're so darn concerned about like, well, how am I going to appear smart in this? How am I going to come up with the best counterpoints? How am I going to appear? How am I going to use the most highly flourishing vocabulary, right? They're focused on what they are going to project themselves as, right? And they're so worried about that, they've actually lost what it is that they're participating in. The words of another just completely fall on deaf ears because they're so worried with whatever image they're trying to project and not actually with the event that they're participating in.
Yes. So there's this Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov, right? There's this character who Yeah, there was this character. I believe it was his first wife. Alyosha's father. I'm looking for his name. I can't find it. I've forgotten it. I think it's
I'm really bad. These Russians have like 10 names apiece. They have like 10 surnames. I know it gets difficult.
Oh, Pivot Pavlovich, right?
Okay.
So his first, I believe it was his first wife. This is how Dostoevsky describes her, or in events that happened. Says that she threw herself off a cliff. She committed suicide, right? Here's an interesting part. He said that she would not have thrown herself off that cliff if it was just slightly less picturesque. Like
Yes, yes.
like she imagined her dead. It's just she imagined herself laying down there as a dead person. Said, "Yes, I would look good there. I would. My dead body would look like a dead body should after it's been thrown off a cliff. You know what I mean?
Th-
Very dramatic. I think
This
human beings we
No,
go on
no,
top.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just made me think of a conversation I had with Sam, who's a priest who I've had on this podcast before. And one of the things that, we were discussing is it ever right to try and emulate Christ? Is that an ideal for us to aspire to? And we came up with the conclusion that the answer is no, because when we're doing that, we're actually infatuated not with becoming Christ, but becoming the image of him, right? So we become infatuated with this idea of like, I am going to be the holy martyr who throws himself off a cliff for the good of humanity. And we're not actually living in the moment, right? We're not actually living in the moment of like, what is this achieving? What am I actually doing here? We're just infatuated with that imagery of me being the holy martyr that throws himself off the cliff into the abyss and saves humanity. It reminds me of one of these like space movies. I forgot the name of the space movie where the guy is like, it's okay. I will plunge myself into the sun in order to save humanity, right? I forgot what movie that is, but there's this movie that ends with a guy taking the rocket and going straight to the sun. And somehow, I think there's a nuclear bomb, and he takes the
Yeah.
nuclear bomb to the sun and sacrifices himself. And it's like most people don't care about saving humanity. They're just obsessed with that image of themselves hurtling themselves to the sun and what that will look like. And that's
Yes.
that's kind of like the danger. That's kind of like the danger that I think Dostoevsky is speaking about when that woman, she didn't care about sacrificing her life for a noble purpose. She was just obsessed with that image of her jumping off a cliff and then everyone being inspired by that, kind of
But
like to emulate Christ in some way.
no, so I believe that. I mean, so if you think about it, man, that's how we think often most of the time is that we don't have rational arguments in our head with ourselves saying, well, if I do this and this. No, we have images in our head that are the inertial motivators for our actions. So we think, should I go talk to the girl? We don't think, oh, well, do I like her? Is she, is she what I've been, the kind of girl I've been looking for? What do I know anything about her? Does she even seem interested in me and so forth? No, we just see ourselves, our machismo selves walking across the room like it's some 1980s movie. And, and we hit the jukebox with our elbows and it plays the right tune at the right time. And we walk up to the girl with a Coke in our hands and we say something real slick and she's like, oh my, and our friends are looking at us saying, oh man, he's so cool, I wish I was him. And that's the image. Believe it or not, that's the kind of image that plays in our head, but it happens such a split second. And we're thinking to ourselves, I'm going to go do it. We make our decisions like that. It's like the person who goes to the gym not because they want to work out, or not because they've even assessed the work is going to take for them to do that. No, but they just see themselves at the gym and they put themselves in a situation where they are doing the right thing at the right time and getting the right kind of response. And they say, yeah, that's why commercials work so well. Okay, that's why commercials work so well, because what commercials are doing, they're reinforcing those images. You're telling you, well, if you this is the image we're going to give you with Coors Lights or Corona. This is the image. So whenever you think of Corona, don't have a logical, reasonable arguments. Ask yourself whether you actually like this beer. No, forget that. What matters is, do you see this image in your head of drinking Corona with all your friends wearing very colorful clothing
Yes.
in the sun, and all of them looking very pretty, very fun, energetic, and is that's what you want, and that's what you're going to get with Corona, right? It's not. So you get Corona, you see me, you sit down on the beer, you sit down
And then you have to pee in like 10 minutes because
in
beer
like
goes
10
right through you.
minutes. And let me tell you something about peeing. It's not pretty.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That's the part they never put on the
They
commercials.
never put, have you noticed that, have you have you noticed that they never they don't show the heroes pooping in movies. Like I've never seen a hero take a dump, except for maybe if it's like for the plot progression, like maybe it's a bomb, he swallowed a tiny minuscule microscopic bomb that he has to just pass through his bowels. But beyond that, no one ever says, you know what, I'm going to take a 5 minute breather, just gotta go poo real quick.
The
I'll
only
be
thing, the
back.
only thing I always think of is I think about that guy in Jurassic Park. He's not the hero. He's like a bad guy, but he's just
Yes.
sitting on the crapper, and then the dinosaur comes and eats him.
Oh, what a way to go. Oh, what a crappy way to go. What
Yeah,
a
right.
shitty
But
way
it's
to
so true. Like I think Steven Spielberg got it right on the nose. It's like, there's a good chance that that's how you're going to die, right? It's not going to be like, with a spear in your hand fighting to the
no,
end. It's going to be, oh, I
no.
just had to take a crap or tie my shoes or something.
I,
And
I had a
that's
heart attack on the seat. That's how most humans die. We don't die in a blaze of glory. We die pathetically. We
yes,
die. I bring that up. I bring that the lady up because I think that often that's how we see these things. These virtues. We don't really care about the virtues and what they mean. If you ask us what they mean, actually, we don't know. But we like to see ourselves in our minds. We like to see ourselves as those warriors, as those people who are in the symbols and the embodiments of those things, so that we get the power, we get the recognition, we get, we imagine ourselves speaking at some talk show, telling about all,
our life story.
our struggles. Yes.
And then when I was 16, this teacher came up to me and, like, yeah, we all, and I'm going to be honest here. Like, I'm definitely guilty of having fantasies of that, of my own and stuff. But I realize it's a problem. And I realize that a lot of us probably have these fantasies, but they're extremely dangerous because they're actually removing ourselves from reality. It's something I fight every single day to try and get those thoughts out of my head.
No, I agree. I totally agree. And it happens, dude, it happens to me too. I think it's a very natural human experience, but I don't think it's natural in the sense of personally, in the sense of, oh yes, this is something that is, that is totally healthy and perfectly fine for me to do. No, I think it's happened because I did not take advantage of my mind as a young lad, taught especially as a young lad to think, right? To think properly rather than having images projected on me. If you don't use your mind for yourself, your mind will be given to you by others. If you don't build your mind for yourself, it'll be transferred to you from, by others. It's either going to be your parents, it's going to be your society, it's going to be your school, it's going to be your TVs, your TV shows, your music. Something has to take that mind space. You can't be an empty vessel of thoughtlessness. It's not possible. Something has to take its place. It's either you make it take you build the space up, or someone's going to give you some voodoo juju.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to move back to humility. Before we do so, it's also important to remember that a lot of these, like you don't even have to imagine yourself on a talk show. Just imagine a conversation with someone you love or something that you anticipate. Like, okay, next week I'm going to speak to my grandpa or whatever it is, and you have this mental imagery of what that will look like, but it's never that thing. You may rehearse the things that you're going to say. You may map out the things that you're going to say, but there's always spontaneity, and there's always like, oh, my grandfather has a cold right now and he's sneezing. No matter how much you would have imagined that encounter to look like, you probably didn't take into consideration, oh, my grandfather has a cold and now he's sneezing. And or, oh my God, like halfway through this, he had to run to the bathroom or whatever. Or all of a sudden he got a phone call from blah, blah, blah from his doctor. All of these variables always enter into the equation. And no matter how
Yeah.
much mental preparation and imagery you create, you'll never actually be able to fully create what actually ends up happening, if it actually ends up happening. You may never even have that conversation with your grandfather that you've been imagining for so long. Okay,
Yeah.
back to humility. So I think that I like that we've talked about like these mental constructions, and I think that in order to really to be humble, you have to kind of destroy all mental constructions of everything. And I think a part of that is removing yourself from positions of superiority. If you have any kind of ideation or visualizations of you walking into a room, giving a speech, everyone's like clapping and there's tears in their eyes, that'll never be the reality. And when you actually give that speech and it's not that thing that you imagined, you're going to hate humanity. You're going to be like, well, they don't understand me. This isn't the way I imagined it to be. They're supposed to have tears in their eyes. They're supposed to be clapping right now. There's not supposed to be that guy in the corner coughing. There's not supposed to be that lady who has this question that disagrees with my theory on whatever. All of these things are highly toxic and dangerous. So anytime you have these images of you being superior, of there nothing going wrong, no one objecting to what it is that you're saying, you've already created a very dangerous space for yourself.
But that's the thing. That's the whole. This is the mother of disappointments.
Yes.
This is where disappointment comes. This is why people feel so unsatisfied, or this word dissatisfied. Excuse me, dissatisfied with their marriages, dissatisfied with their kids, dissatisfied with their work, dissatisfied with their life, dissatisfied with friends, with situations, because they always have these images that don't correlate with reality. They think that getting married, for example, is going to be just one big sex party after another, just one great one, just one great good time. No, it's not, bruv. Calm the hell down. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Or you think like having kids is gonna be such a joy. It's such a joy, they're a blessing. Let me tell you something, man. Blessings and poopy diapers are very, very close. I mean, they are very, very similar when it comes to kids, man. But let me tell you this real quick. So, and it's like, or you have this, interaction with people. You have this all the time, especially when it comes to, you want to do something nice for someone, right? And the person doesn't respond as happily or excited as you anticipated they would in your mind. And all of a sudden you think they're ungrateful. No, you're not ungrateful, because you should never have, if you were going to give them the gift, you should have given them the gift because you wanted to give them the gift, not because you want them to be grateful. Nobody has how you say, nobody has to be grateful for what you give them, but you have every authority and every, how you say, every responsibility to give them out of a genuine desire to give, not for any return whatsoever.
Oh, beautiful, man. Absolutely well said, my friend. I think that is so true, because a lot of these ruminations of superiority, they're not only projections of yourself, but they're also projections of fictional reactions of the people around you. I'll make it even super small, right? Let's say you get someone a gift and you
Yeah.
think it's the perfect gift. Like, I know Kenny so well, he's going to really love this thing. And then you give the person the gift and they're like, oh, lovely. Right. And then you kind of know that that wasn't the reaction that you were thinking. And what's going on with this is that you had a false rumination that you were going to get this perfect gift and that they would respond accordingly. And
Yeah.
you know what I found in life? When you give a gift, always provide a gift receipt. I don't care no matter how perfect you think that gift is, I always ask the cashier, hey, could I get a gift receipt with that, please? Because I always know that whatever I think is going to be perfect for that person is not perfect for that person. It's just as simple as that. And that's what we need. That's what we need to start doing, is we need to destroy these ruminations, start destroying these theories of what ideal states look like. I think once these ideal states have been completely destroyed, I think we have an actual chance of being decent folk.
Yes, absolutely. Now, it's very hard to do, but it's possible. It's really possible, because it causes so much unhappiness in our lives. And you would think that we'd stop it by now, but we I guess we're gluttons for punishment. The ideas that we hold about this world, we have never really tested. We never really tested them. Even something as simple as asking someone who's actually in the situation. But often those people lie to us. You ask a married couple who's been married for like 20 years, what's your secret? And they say stupid things like, always listen to one another, always care for each other. It's like, shut up. Shut up. You're like, shut the hell up, okay? Because first of all, duh, that's what everybody says. But really, why is it working for you? And here's the thing, often it may not even be working for them. They might just get divorced the very next day, never next week, never very next month. But everybody wants you to have the idea of them that you're fulfilling the thing. And so that's why it's very hard for young people to get advice today, because even the people who are supposed to give them advice have these crazy images of themselves giving advice to the young and don't even care about what's actually going on in their life. So the person who's having this horrible, situation in his marriage will never say, listen, kid, I got 2 words for you. Run away. Never do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, at least that's honest. At least that's honest to his situation. You know what I mean? But the point is simply that the mental ideas we have often destroy our interaction, or our the joy that we could our enjoyment of reality. And those people who are the safeguards, the gatekeepers, the people who are supposed to help us ease into reality, are themselves delusional. And so you find yourself in a world where all you have is, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and start getting rid of these things through either, well, there are ways to get rid of them. I'm not going to go into those, but get rid of those ideas, or you suffer the consequences and learn by experience.
I'm actually really glad that you just said that, because I think it kind of actually reaches the heart of the matter. And I think let's go to your married couple that's been married 20 years, and let's say their marriage is completely falling apart at the seams. Okay.
Yeah.
They're on the brink of divorce, and yet a young couple comes up to them. What's the secret to marriage? And they say, oh, just listen and do that and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, their marriage is completely in shambles.
Mm.
I think that is at the heart of the matter, because that person is clinging to a form of superiority. They're clinging to superiority of like, no, 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 no. This marriage is under control. This is under control. This is why, you see, I think that when people cling on to things that are highly destructive, it's not
Yeah.
just because they're not a Christ-like martyr, right? There's also this element of like, well, if I give up on this, that's a reflection of my ego, or that's a reflection of me, right? If I give up on this marriage, it shows a certain level of weakness with myself, that I couldn't overcome this. I couldn't fix it. Thinking about our evil person, evil people like to control everything, right? And I think we're both in agreement about that. If you're evil, you love to control everything around you, from the curtains in your apartment to the way your marriage functions. You are a control freak. And when you have to give up on something, a marriage, a job, or whatever, well, you're abdicating control of something, right? And that's contrary to evil. Evil loves to have its hands in everything. Everything goes through me. Every decision goes through me. If I can't control it, there's something wrong with it. Whereas I feel like our humble person easily relinquishes control. They're like the humble person is like, they flick the keys to their son and say, you know, why don't you drive the next 50 miles? Like, that's what I imagine, is that you just seamlessly give up control, and you easily admit when things are outside of your control. I think that's what true humility is that you have no desire to control, and you instantly relinquish control when it no longer serves you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last thing that I want to talk about, because we're almost at an hour here. Is it possible that, let's just say we meet our control freak, I need to control everything, I think very highly of myself. Do you think there's a pathway that person can follow to become humble? Or do you think this is just hard coded into their DNA?
No, man, there's always a pathway now. I think people can change. I think anybody can change, But I think the pathway is going to be different for each person, because I don't think life is a factory, in the sense of it doesn't pump out the same kinds of people. It certainly doesn't pump out the same kind of situation. It doesn't pump out the same, much of same of anything really. Life is always, let's just say this, um, this world we're living in is very unique, and so I think that and it produces unique beings. So I think that people are. It doesn't matter how bastardly a person becomes. I think that there's always an opportunity to change, but I think that it's one of those things that you have to know the person because each opportunity for change is unique to the person.
I struggle with this. I find that, again, this is very superficial advice, but I feel like if you are, and there are tendencies that I have that are very controlling even to this day.
Yeah,
And I think one easy thing that you can do is at least create a bucket of things that are within your realm and things outside of your realm. That was, I learned about this maybe about a year ago, is just that bucketing process. Making a list of like, here are the things that I really am passionate about, or here are the things that I can control, and here are the things that I cannot. If I make the recommendation of like, well, just surrender all control, that's actually a form of control. That's actually a form of control. If you say to yourself, well, I'm going to go from being a millionaire to being a pauper on the street, that's actually a form of control, because now your ultimate desire or your ultimate goal is to show how you can live without control, which again is a form of control. I think the
yeah.
easiest thing to do is just create some kind of list of things that you're going to hold on to, things you're going to let go, and let that list change over time. Don't try and control how that list changes. Just create the list and then let life take its course. Some things will fall into your control, some things will fall out of your control. Just don't be too mindful of what flows in and out of your control. Kenny, thank you so much. I certainly was humbled by our conversation today, so thank you.
No worries. Thank you for having me. It was a great time.
This concludes the 132nd episode of the Truth Island podcast. I'm Aaron Azrod.